Hey everybody, welcome back yet again for another build challenge video. This time I'm going to be focusing a build optimization around the Dizzy grenade launcher, which got a recent buff in the newest patch. It's got its reload reduced to 5.6 seconds. And before I jump into the build, I'll kind of just give you a rundown of how I see the Dizzy and what its niche is, and then we'll work backwards to build around it. So the Dizzy is sort of an area denial device. It's meant to make a threat for builds that are trying to stay around 200 meters and kite you. It creates a sphere of explosion centered at its effective range of 265 meters. You'll notice it has a 90-meter radius, meaning that they're at the epicenter of this sphere, it reaches back 90 meters from 265 and then reaches deeper to 90 meters. So all in all, the explosion will hit up to 355 meters and then reach back about 175 to 175 meters from you. The issue is that there is flight time, and so you kind of have to lead your target. So if they're moving towards you, you have to fire early enough that they'll be caught in this. They'll fly into the sphere by the time it reaches out to that 265 meters. Another way to use this though is to just make sure that there's like some sort of backsplash, some wall, getting your opponents to fight inside of like a little small nook or cranny like it exists in some maps, or to just get above them and shoot down. A great time to use the Dizzy is right as people's energy is burned out and they're falling towards the ground. The nice thing is that even for permaflight builds that don't end up going all the way to the ground, you often can still catch them as long as you have the distance right, because they aren't going to be able to change their rough direction of movement much. And so as long as you catch them early and you're far enough away when they run out of battery, you will be able to catch them on the drop. Now, that said, there is an issue with the dead zone of the Dizzy. So if they get too close, the Dizzy no longer works, in which case you're going to need to manual aim down into the ground and shoot the ground beneath you in order to make them inside the sphere as they're trying to pressure you. This is a great tip for double Zimmermans, especially shield users, because if you aim behind them, the splash will go behind the shield as well. So it's a great way to get that big chunky 1000 accumulative impact built up. And the build, and I think anytime you're on the Dizzy, it is going to be crucial that you find an opportunity to make the Dizzy useful, as it is your primary source of accumulative impact, and not landing it is quite the punishment. It's not really a great direct hit punish. Like as a stagger punish, it can do the job for some lightweights, but in general you want a different weapon to do it, meaning you want to land this before the stagger and set up opportunities. So with that in mind, I realized because of the weight of the Dizzy, it's going to be tricky to build this on a lightweight, so we're going to have to build heavy. Now, the Dizzy poses an interesting question, though, which is why not just run the Earshot? Because the Earshot's a shoulder weapon, letting you run a stronger weapon in your hand. Granted, the Earshot has higher stats, but a lower reload. So the Dizzy does give you more opportunities to take those shots. However, I think that the Earshot, having the Dizzy really incentivizes you to find a way to make two shoulder weapons that you want to pair together that the Earshot wouldn't allow, because you can only have one shoulder weapon if you've got an Earshot equipped. So right off the bat, I knew it was going to have to be a tanky build. The Dizzy requires it wants you to have the ability to control spacing despite being heavy, so that naturally led me to a Tetra, as the hover mode gives you the ability to rapidly create space and shuffle into directions, making it hard to stay up close to the Dizzy. The next thing is that I figured this would largely be a sniper build, given that the Dizzy is working really well for us at medium range to long range. So the other right-hand weapon was pretty forced, the Harris. Not only does it give us access to another firing stance, which is always great on Tetris, it gives us another burst impact tool that works against lightweights, which is also really nice. It also lets us poke at sniper range and even go for charge attacks when they're outside the 260 meter range as well. The two shoulder weapons that I thought would make the most sense, given that they were going to need to work at both long and medium range and be good stagger punishers, was going to be the needle launchers, which also got a buff. The projectile speed seems to have really helped the effectiveness against lightweights, and the damage got improved. So this is our primary stagger punish if we can set it up, firing both of these at the same time, which we wouldn't be able to do with an Earshot. So that's how we're going to use these. So that covers the four weapons that I came up with for the build. The next question was going to be the FCS. I was kind of torn between the Walt and the one that I ended up on, which is the 21A. So why I went for the 21A is that having long range assist maxed as long as we have the scan distance to use it, allows us to really make use of the charged terrace as a sniper against lightweights that are at extreme range trying to mislocate us. It also lets us set up the Dizzy earlier because we can catch them in scan at about 600 meters. And then the FCS will immediately make a prediction, sort of like where they're going to be, and let the Dizzy accurately fire the shell at the most beneficial position rather than being slightly off. And so the long range is really valuable actually to us, interestingly enough. It's got enough medium assist to work for our purposes. And then the close range assist is almost not that important because even though we do have charged hair shots that we want to be able to stagger lightweights on, the truth is we're going to be going into soft lock anyways whenever they close the gap in order to make sure that we can shoot the Dizzy on the ground. If lightweights or whatever are trying to, or double Zimmermans are trying to like get right in our face. So given that we'll be in soft lock anyways up close, the 21A really does the trick with close range assist being at 45. We don't need much more than that in order to make the linear rifle reliable. Another note about the weapon payload that I'll kind of describe is you don't need to fire both the stun needles at the same time. They both have really good reloads, which is synergizing well with the fact that the Dizzy is going to be on cooldown for 5 seconds and the Harris is going to be cooling frequently, although not always. For certain lightweights or builds that we have to like build up a bit of a cumulative before going for the charged Harris, we're largely going to be running 3 firing stances, so having them all on 5 seconds and cycling them really leaves very little windows for opponents to get their energy back, as long as we're keeping the space at our like sweet spot in medium range. Okay, so if we're going to be a heavy Tetra and we're going to be doing a lot of shuffling, we need big capacity, and the stun needles have huge EN supply requirements, so the Santai isn't going to work. You could compare the Coral, but I did find that having the ability to chase down lightweights by just touching my legs to the ground briefly for 1 second, 1.1 seconds I guess in this case, and then having the full capacity there was more valuable, and I did find the 20G just performed better. Boosters, there wasn't going to be a lot of options at this weight, so the Burzell is a little too heavy and we're not going to be fast enough for the assault boost anyways, so I ended up just taking the shuffling as my primary way to close the gap in position and use the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're only a little bit over the ideal weight, meaning that we don't have to worry too much about our QB reload getting penalized, and we don't need to do cancels of our shots that much because we have so many, we can just keep cycling them for the most part. I went with the 424 legs rather than the heavies just because we need to get lose some weight with the amount of weight of these weapons, so I couldn't afford to run the heavy Tetra legs. Also, the hover mode's faster in these ones. The HAL core was nice for cutting down that EN recharge delay on the 20D generator. As of the recent buff, it's very quick, especially with cores like this. This gives us a lot of resistances and AP. The booster efficiency leaves something to be desired, but it's not too bad. The stability is not as much of a concern because we're running a Tetra core anyways, and so most of our stability is coming from our legs, and we wouldn't be getting a percentage-wise large increase by, say, going to the Mind Alpha core here, only getting us about 70 points out of 2,200, so not really needed. The Melander arms give us really good firearm spec and decent stats across the board while not being too heavy and too intensive on the EN supply. A lot of arms tend to get us over our weight, so there wasn't a ton of options that gave me good firearm spec and stats. You don't need too much recoil control because all the weapons are sort of like firing stances either. From there, the HAL core just gave us a really good scan distance, which we need, good stats and stability, and that pretty much covers why I ended up with the HAL head. Fit in nicely with the weight as well, so that is how I ended up here. That basically covers all the weapons, or sorry, the entire build. Pulse armor should be self-explanatory. We're not going to be chasing down anyone into assault armor, so ain't going to happen. And also, if they assault armor us, we're not staggered, so we can actually activate our needles as soon as we activate pulse armor and wake them up, and we'll almost be staggered. You don't even have to assault boost tech it if you don't want, though. That's the funny thing. You can just eat it and then stun needle them. Or even just charge Terrace and then stun needle to get a better punish or whatever weapon's available. So in general with this build, I would say that it is important to not go too high in the air. You kind of want to like make it so that when you drop, your battery starts regenerating pretty quickly. Although for certain matchups that have really good ground generators like Ming Tangs and whatnot, yeah, you will go up into the air and try to exhaust them and take advantage of the permaflight capability that this build offers you. So yeah, you can take advantage of that. not using the stun needles at the same time and alternating the timing is a really cool trick. Don't forget that the needles are your fastest reloading. Well, I mean, they're kind of tied with the Harris, but I'll just do both here. So we'll see if the needles are done or first. Yeah, okay, so the Harris cooling is slightly faster. So being aware of how much stability your opponent has and how many shots with the Harris uncharged are going to be required in order to set up a stagger on charged Harris is nice to know. Don't forget that Dizzy is your sort of like highly valuable tool. If you can find an opportunity to set it up, go for it. At the start of the round, obviously, is a good time. And then not getting too greedy and firing it up into the air is going to be important. You want to try to outlast your opponent, make them go to the ground, and then fire it into the ground in order to get that unavoidable splash shot into charged Harris. Your best punish, again, is going to be the stun needles, as they can fire both, and which you can also follow up with a charged Harris if it's not overheated, or even the bazooka again as well. So that'll be your rough combo. I'm going to start with a friend of mine, Sighty. My match with him, even though his build's a non-standard archetype, as I think this match really demonstrated a lot of the cool little strategies and skills you want to use with the Dizzy, namely poking them when they don't expect it at very extreme range, using manual aim to set up the Dizzy, like when you know what pattern they're doing when they dodge. Like if you know they're going to dodge to the left. I see this a lot when people dodge left, right, left, right. If you know they're going to dodge a certain way after your Harris and your 2 stun needles fire, then manually aiming the Dizzy to where you know they're going to jump can be a really sneaky way to defeat any FCS evasion. Here, by the way, I'll put Sighty's YouTube as well in a comment below in case you want to check him out as well. But I also think this match shows the importance of using soft lock to make the Harris more reliable at close range as well. That occurs later on in the match, so you can see that when it happens here. I think it's the second round I win, but you'll check it out in a little bit. Long and short here is mainly I'm just popping my Pulse Armor early because Tetras don't have that much health. I don't want to risk getting staggered and then taking some direct hit damage, and rinse and repeat here. Using the regular Harris pokes against lightweights is still valuable as it does set up the charged Harris. This is another thing too, is using the charged Harris or the stun needles on Pulse Armor will shred most of it. So if you have the ability to, don't just back off, try to shred off the armor and cut down the amount of time that you're going to have to be evading them dramatically. So right here is where I'm going to manual aim the Dizzy and soft lock the charged Harris in order to clinch the win. So it's showing just how good this FCS is in soft lock, even at ranges where maybe its close range is not its strong suit. For shields, we're basically going to be able to overwhelm them with the sheer volume of firing stance weapons that we put out. They can't assault boost if their shield's up, and so they're going to have to create windows of vulnerability where they switch into assault boost and try to gap close to us. I think that the important thing here is just not firing the stun needles at the same time, getting the Dizzy out early and on reload so that you've got more outgoing fire per second, and just separating the stun needles in order to create just that pressure so they can't just rush into and they have to keep opening up the shield again. And then hopefully, remember, the Dizzy will be reloaded for the moment where their energy's out and you can shoot the ground as they run out of battery. A reverse joint double Zimm. In this case, knowing that they can't really kick us without giving us a window to land this double stun needles is a major threat. So just basically look to cause whiff kicks if you can. And every time they shoot the Zimmermans, they are also having to delay their QB shuffle, right? They have to pull the trigger before they can shuffle. So if you can get a sense of their rhythm, that can set up really good opportunities to punish them with one of your firing stances. Kicks are also never a bad idea. You have more stability than normal, and so you can survive more double Zimms than is typical. Okay, more lightweights, this time looking for hybrids, so Zimmerman pistols, Etsijin pistols, all that stuff. The main story here is trying to keep the fight at medium range and overwhelming them with firing stances so they're burning out their battery and can't mount their own offense. They can't shoot if they're dodging, so that is the general theme here, is splitting up our 4 attacks, trying to do them in the most reload cost-efficient way possible, so charged Harris. Although trying to set up the Harris with like any other attack, whether it be, set up the charged Harris with any other attack, whether it be uncharged Harris pokes or a needle, as the needles have decent accumulative impact buildup as well. That can help you get a very early stagger. The thing is, the charged Harris is not going to stagger even a lightweight right away, so if you have no accumulative impact built up, then you kind of want to reserve it unless they're rushing you down. Like if they're giving you space, then try to poke a little bit first. I'll call this sort of. There's actually two matches here with similar builds, which are basically heavy biped elevators of one variety or not. Our build is really good against these because they don't even try to control the space, so we can set up our dizzy very easily. And the needle is also a really good sniper tool. Oftentimes they are put into this position where they have to do what they don't want to do, which is assault boost towards their opponents. We're also tanky enough in this case to handle the flamethrower. So the fight is pretty much a mop-up job. It's not a good matchup for this opponent, unfortunately for them. Double melee. The main thing to be mindful of here is mini stuns, as it knocks you out of hover mode. So really using your shuffling to cancel lunges, and also to punish lunges with the double stun needle, or the charged Harris if they're primed for a stagger into stun needle, is always going to be something that we're looking out for. They have a very hard time approaching, to be honest. Though we just have so much firing stance. This is like the worst case scenario. So I feel like there's the worst case scenario for them. So I feel like there's not too much to comment on here. The only way it could be worse is if I had a shield. But yeah, in this case, just overwhelm them and punish every lunge attempt with some sort of nuke, and create height instability as well, given that you're a Tetra. Drop down once they start to close or get close to you. This is getting closer to one of the worst case scenario matchups for us. So a double rifle build. The assault rifle is not quite as bad as another Harris, but they don't deflect that easily, and so we are going to have the onus on us to zone them to the edge of the map, trying to set up good opportunities to use the Dizzy. And usually the first step to doing that is getting them their back to the wall, and then not rushing too close to them, but trying to set up the Dizzy for an opportune moment to hit them. You can assault boost rush them, but I feel like you're too slow most of the time to actually land any of your attacks. And most of the attacks we want, like the charged Harrises that have the good projectile speed, are going to require you holding still, so, or in hover mode anyway. But you can see the sniper FCS putting in work here. They aren't going to be expecting so many of these attacks to hit them from so long. Don't forget the effective range of attacks is further if it's a charge attack than the listed stat. So charge Harris actually hits further than the regular hair shots. At this point, I probably should have not been doing the charged Harris shots and just making do with the uncharged Harris to poke, as they have so little health now that I don't really need to land a charged Harris into combo anymore. I just need to poke them to death and just keep them moving and not letting the Harris give them any breathing room.